What is MQA? Do you need it? Is it overrated? What separates MQA from other forms of playback? All these answers and more coming up. Greetings, Bosshead, and welcome aboard. Stuart Childs here, HomeStudioBasics.com, helping you make sound decisions leading to a beautiful audio experience that will make you fall in love with music, not gear, all over again. So, what is MQA? MQA, Master Quality Authenticated, was invented by Bob Stewart, co-founder of the British hi-fi manufacturer Meridian Audio. It represents an efficient way for people to listen to large, high-quality audio files that would otherwise be too bulky to play through a typical streaming app, like Spotify, that requires a lot of bandwidth. The process takes master quality, high resolution files authenticated by the artist in the studio and basically packages them into a smaller size without reducing the quality. Lossy, compressed files are typically very small and convenient, but come at the expense of an honest representation of the track in question. Those files aren't actually authentic as they come from third-party apps such as Apple, Amazon, etc. These files are given by record labels but are subsequently compressed down to a manageable size for streaming. MQA circumvents this issue by providing the original file in a small package without sacrificing quality. Another claim to fame of MQA is the ability to reduce what is known as time or temporal smearing. To understand time smearing, we must first understand frequency response, bit depth, and sample rate. As outlined in my What is DSD article, my bit depth versus sample rate article, and countless other articles and videos, humans cannot hear over 20,000 Hz no matter what some snobs on the internet tell you. This is one of the most basic concepts in audio that gets glossed over time and again by people who have no idea what they're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
What is interesting to note is the fact that we still may be able to perceive, on some level, the intricacies of higher sample rates' effect on our perception of sound, or what is known as temporal precision, which is measured through impulse response. In simpler terms, frequency response is very important, but the time domain performance is just as important, albeit less understood. In 1929, von Békésy discovered that humans can actually hear time differences of up to 10 microseconds. For clarity's sake, a microsecond is equal to 1/1,000,000th of a second. While this does suggest that higher sample rates can be effective in providing a somewhat more resolving signal, i.e. they can improve temporal precision to an extent, thus somewhat reducing the ringing tails after the main impulse, the law of diminishing returns kicks in after about 96K. In other words, anything beyond that is still essentially useless from a more is better, higher is superior standpoint. Something audiophiles still love to argue with me about, even despite overwhelming evidence that it doesn't matter. To quote Sound on Sound, of course, the idea that these ringing tails are a bad thing is not new, and converter manufacturers like DCS and Wadia, amongst others, have been offering alternative filtering schemes for many, many years. So what can be done to get rid of these impulse response tails? Well, there are several ways to reduce their duration, and the first and easiest is to simply employ higher sampling rates, which is possibly why some listeners claim that existing high-res audio formats sound more natural. However, this approach is subject to rapidly diminishing returns above 96 kHz. The audio data rate grows enormously and impractically for only moderate reductions in the filter ringing duration. There you have it. Diminishing returns makes yet another return in audio. I've talked ad nausea about this concept in headphones and DACS, but now it's proven yet again that it exists in the source file itself. Who would have thought? Well, I did, since I've been harping on the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem for the better part of 2 years now. I've learned at this point that it doesn't really matter how much data and objective science you bring to the table. People will still argue with you about it because they're in essence always trying to justify spending money needlessly on things that don't matter. In fact, I expect someone to argue the point made by Sound on Sound as well. I'll say it again. All of the relevant audio information ranges from 0 Hz to about 22 to 24 kHz. Anything from 24 to 48 can be relevant in that there is still a small amount of musical information present above the noise floor, but anything over 48K is just negligible noise and doesn't matter. You know, like a lot of the comments that I get from people trying to argue with me. Now that you've heard all of this, think for a second about the hundreds of thousands of DACs on the market today, all vying for a chance at your wallet.
Find my wallet.
Which one is it?
It's the one that says bad motherfucker.
Now think about how many of those DACs advertise these ridiculously high PCM rates that don't matter at all. The DSD crap that doesn't matter at all. The quad, octa, hexa, dexa, plexiglass infused amp DAC that's got your back and will stroke your sack if you ask nicely enough, Jack! None of it matters, yet we still have people falling for marketing ploys rather than doing any real research of their own and educating themselves on what truly matters in this hobby. Aside from the music, it comes down to using the mind that God gave you and not getting scammed. The sad part is that people will happily piss their money away if it means feeding their addiction and buying into yet another placebo. The people who won't accept these basic concepts are the same ones who think Pre-Madonna was before Madonna was born. I.e., Pre-Madonna. Now, for what can actually reduce the unwanted pre- and post-ringing tails in an impulse response, enter apodization. A concept published in 2004 by Peter Craven, this cascade series of filters allows for almost complete eradication of said tails and the temporal smearing, a concept also utilized by MQA. With a typical 24 192K system, you'll get about 100 microseconds of time smear from an impulse response. MQA aims to cut that number to around 10 microseconds, right in line with what we discussed above in regards to von Békésy's findings. That is, that humans can perceive time differences of around 10 microseconds. Not bad. The only way this works, however, is in a fully functioning system. That is, the complete end-to-end sampling and encoding process, MQA, all the way to the decoding process utilized by an MQA certified DAC. Luckily for us, the IFI Zen is a perfect choice here at around a paltry $130. The AudioQuest Dragonfly Red is another option, and one that I've recommended countless times for many reasons. That's right, you can achieve near perfection in audio for around $150.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
Also taking into account a Tidal Hi-Fi membership. I haven't included the headphone, which would add to the cost, but you get the idea. Hi-Fi has become almost ubiquitous. There is really no excuse for streaming low-quality dog food tracks anymore.
And tell the cook this is low-grade dog food, all right?
Do you now understand why DACs to me are almost completely irrelevant to the actual listening experience? In reality, they have very little to do with how good or bad the track is going to sound. They can alter the flavor a bit via output impedance, i.e. warm or cool / neutral, but in the grand scope of audio, DACs are meant to do a practical job, converting digital information into analog, not become the main focus and cause people to lose their minds and obsess over them. Even if you don't have an MQA DAC, you could still theoretically hear masters inside Tidal, but only the first fold of the decoding process. However, to hear the most accurate representation of the track, you want the full unpack that can only be achieved with the appropriate MQA certified DAC. But how exactly does MQA provide an ultra high resolution in a tiny package? Simply put, they use what's called the Origami method of unpacking. This is referred to as encapsulation, not conventional lossy downsampling. To quote Sound on Sound again, to meet these challenges, MQA uses the sophisticated data reduction strategy described in the Music Origami box. This, in effect, folds the relevant high-frequency audio information back to the noiseful region of the baseband audio signal, but in such a way that it can be abstracted and reconstructed for lossless replay. The sample rate of an MQA file is always based on that of its source material, so original material at 88.2, 176.4, or 352.8 would be encoded as 44.1 MQA file, whereas material starting out with 96, 192, or 384K sample rates would be encoded as an MQA file at 48K. Maintaining the base sample rate for each format is essential, as any sample rate conversion processes would compromise the system's time domain performance. Unquote. It's also important to note that while traditional sample rate conversion employs anti-aliasing filters to negate the unwanted artifacts in the recording, MQA does not. This strategy allows for a completely clean signal without the unwanted timing blur that goes along with the more conventional method of conversion. It also does not largely matter anyway, since, again, any alias elements will always be infinitely quieter than anything in the audible range, i.e. you still cannot hear them. But does MQA sound better? This is perhaps the most important question, and one that I personally wrestled with for quite a while. I know others have as well. From a theoretical standpoint, it would seem to make a world of difference. Within the scope of a practical listening experience, I lean towards yes. I completely agree with sound-on-sounds analysis and echo almost the same exact sentiments, but I'll put it in my own words. The music just takes on a somewhat more live flavor. The instruments sound crisper, livelier, and more vibrant. They have more personality. The sound staging is better and everything sounds more liquid, smooth, and natural. The timbre of the instrument sounds better and more correct. Attack, sustain, and decay is also that much more realistic. Now, is it a monumental difference? I would say no. It's more subtle than you would think, but it's definitely there. I absolutely believe the combo of good headphones plus Tidal MQA DAC plus Tidal Hi-Fi monthly subscription is worth it. I pay for it and really enjoy it, even though I've had some issues with Tidal in the past. Those issues have been somewhat rectified in recent months. To be able to experience everything I've described in this article from a technical standpoint makes me incredibly spoiled. The MQA is better notion pretty much cannot be disputed at this point when you look at the literature. With a great set of headphones like the K712, you're getting as close to a "you're there" feeling as can be realistically expected. Remember, you still have headphones on your head. In my exhaustive research over the years, I think a lot of people over-exaggerated the effects of a headphone with good soundstage, particularly in the case of AKGs. It's not that the headphone doesn't provide an out-of-your-head experience. It certainly does. But the wild and unsubstantiated, "it's like you're there" claims can be safely discarded if you happen to be watching this. It's really not like that. A headphone like the K702 or K712 can give you a more in-person type of feeling, but those moments are fleeting. They come and go. It's not as if they just linger for the entire duration of the listening experience, causing you to feel like you're in the front row of a Fish concert high as a kite.
You cool, man? Like how?
A good speaker setup to me is still superior to a great set of cans with regard to the illusion of being there, but even that isn't perfect. I had a chance to listen to $60,000 Mark Levinson speakers at Audio Advice Music Matters 2 years in a row in 2018 and 2019. While they sounded utterly breathtaking in every way, I still had to close my eyes and concentrate super hard to feel even one iota of being in front of a band. You can imagine how out of control audiophiles get when they try to describe that within the context of tiny headphone drivers that are inches away from your ears. It's pretty asinine. When it's all said and done though, I definitely recommend MQA every day and twice on Sunday, homie! Well, that's about it for today, my friend. Leave me some love down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content like this, and turn on bell notifications while you're at it, yeah? If you love what I do here and you want to support the channel in a more personal way, hit that Patreon link down below and check out all the value I have to offer you. Last but not least, don't forget to ask me about my grandchildren, don't feed the troll, and most importantly, don't ever give up. And always remember to keep it dummy thick! Yeah. Check. Review brought to you by Stu. Here's the coda. I'm nasty on the mic. Call me warm soda. Chopped up this beat real fine like cold produce. Steady in my veggies so I can focus on my David Copperfield. Y'all hocus pocus. A little loopy when I wrote this. Esoteric dopeness. Cultivating the will of a soldier. Fighting through the pain like Dooku. I told ya, sold you on my style. Snapping on cats like Private Pile. I get semi-wild every once in a while. 911 on the dial. Alone at the top with no rival. Dark is my world without a Bible. Without God's love there's no survival. So my mindset is tribal. Yeah, my mindset is tribal. Yeah, my mindset is tribal.